Right, the next item on the agenda is the Greater Christchurch Public Transport Business Case. Could I invite staff to introduce the report?
Certainly can. Morning, Madam Chair. To my left is John Dorr, and he's been helping on the business cases which are before you today. So I'll just give a quick overview of what's in the report, if that's okay. So public transport is obviously not something which is solely the remit of Christchurch City Council. As you're aware, Environment Canterbury run the bus services, Waka Kotahi fund, and also have buses on their state highways, and Selwyn and Waimak are also involved as well. So I just wanted to tell you that we've all been working collaboratively together for a couple of years on the business case which is before you today, and that's really about getting what we call the foundations and rest of network up to a standard that befits a city of this size. It's not about gold plating it. It's simply getting it up to where we think it needs to be, and we've got a 10-year program of works which the business case recommends to get there. The Mass Rapid Transit business case is going through a separate process, and we'll report back to you separately on that. So if you're thinking about fast trains and anything else, that's not really the discussion point for today. What it recommends is a 10-year investment program for the 5 agencies, so the ones I've just mentioned previously, ECAN, Waka Kotahi, Selwyn, Waimak and ourselves. And for us, this involves a capital program of $76 million over a 10-year period, on top of the $18 million that we already have in our LTP. So essentially, from our perspective, that would mean putting in bus lanes, intersection improvements, bus shelters, and purchasing the land, which is for sale from Otakara at the moment on Chewham Street for potential extension of the bus interchange to cater for the additional buses that are likely to go in there into the future. We haven't been able to incorporate all that funding into our draft LTP, which we've briefed you on. So we've been able to include 60 million of the funding in the draft transport capital program. So simply post-COVID, as you're well aware, funding is tight, and we haven't been able to include everything in there. So some of that 76 million sits in years 11 and 12 at the moment. But the key thing is that in years 1 to 3 of the LTP, what we're progressing with is what we already have in our LTP, and that's the Lincoln Road bus priority measures and the property purchase down there. So we can align that with what Waka Kotahi are looking to do as part of the New Zealand Upgrade Program, and ensure that one of our key growth nodes, Hallsville, has good bus priority measures to the centre of the city. So that's really key that we progress with that, and that's already in our 18 to 28 LTP. And what we'd also be looking to do is use the $5 million which was allocated as part of the CRAF, the Capital Regeneration Acceleration Facility funding, and use that to upgrade the bus shelters and bus intersections for the 17 and 28 routes. So they're the 2 non-core routes that ECAN are looking to increase the frequency of services on, and to support that, the business case recommends that we improve the bus priority measures and the bus shelters along that core route. So increasing the ridership from, so if the business case were delivered from to 2028, it would increase the ridership from 14 million trips to 20 million trips, and that's approximately an increase of 40-odd%. So that's an overview of what's before you today, and as I said, we've been working closely with the other authorities on this, and they are putting similar reports up to their respective organisations for endorsement of this program of work. And if all the organisations do endorse it, then the business case would go up to Waka Kotahi for approval by their board, and that gives us a far better chance of Crown funding for these projects. That's it.
Excellent, thank you. I'm going to get it moved and seconded so that we've got it on the table. Mike Davidson, and I'll second it. I'll open it up for questions, and perhaps if I start for one, does this finally allow us, when we're making investment decisions on bus priority measures and corridors, etc., does that actually enable us to link that absolutely to the commitment to increase the frequency and dependability, therefore, of the buses?
That's correct, it does.
So that's finally. So we haven't ever been able to do that before.
That's correct. And look, what the business case recommends is for the 5 core routes, putting in bus lanes, intersection improvements, so the bus can get from A to B quicker, but also can get there more reliably. So it doesn't take 20 minutes one day and 35 minutes the next, because we know that puts people off using public transport. But that needs to be done in tandem and integration with an increase in services. So if ECAN commit to supporting this business case as well, then they will increase the frequency of the service, and we will have the bus priority measures in place. So as the Mayor has indicated, that means a far more integrated public transport system, and we also have the 3 other organisations involved in that as well.
And if it's endorsed by the 3, well, the 4 of us, so Waimakariri, Selwyn districts, Christchurch City and ECAN, this will formulate a joint component of our long-term plan in terms of the consultation document, which would be a first in our history.
That's correct, yes. So that needs to tell an integrated story to the people of Christchurch.
That's lovely, thank you. Sorry, Jimmy Chen and Mike Davidson.
Only the
Aaron
cost, the
Keown.
expenditure for this the public transport, 2.3 on page 689, you particularly emphasize within the 10 years, there's $60 million, but beyond that, there's 16 million, total 76. But in 7.1, you mentioned there's $94 million. And I just don't know which figure is correct.
So the 76 is the recommendation from the business case, 76.2, that we spend in addition to the 18 million that we already have in our 2018 to 28 LTP. So the business case is recommending that we complete those projects we already have in the LTP, plus spend over the 10-year period an additional 76 million. So the total of those two gets you the 94.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Mike.
Thanks. So I guess the endorsement of these 2 business cases, across the different councils will actually, I guess, allow us to now start having a proper conversation with central government, and also potentially unlock additional dollars on top of the standard fund.
Correct.
Thank you. The other thing, these 2 business cases that will be endorsing today, they have the biggest impact on Christchurch City residents?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Aaron and then Tim.
Okay, so just to go back to the numbers there, Richard, we're currently 12 million trips go to 20 million trips?
14 to 20.
14 to 20. So if we are currently 2.2% of trips are done by bus, a 40% increase gets us to about 3%. So after spending $156 million, would still be at 3/4 of what we were pre-quake, which was around 4%. And in that same time, we get population growth.
Yeah, so it's trying to cater for the additional population growth. Obviously, Christchurch is growing, and you're not going to get an uplift in PT. Like, you could spend a lot of money on public transport, but if you continue to grow at a low density rate at the periphery of Christchurch, then greenfield subdivisions doesn't have good PT penetration and user people using public transport. So it's dependent on having an integrated land use strategy as well. But yeah, look, the overall number, 14 to 20 million, that's obviously an increase, but it's currently a small percentage of the overall number of trips throughout Greater Christchurch. But bear in mind, this is only the first stage of the business cases, And as I mentioned, you also have the mass rapid transit business case, which is going before the Greater Christchurch Partnership, or the problem statements are going before the Greater Christchurch Partnership tomorrow, and then that'll come back for similar endorsement and briefings to you, and that's where you might get far more people using public transport.
Right, so, but we end up at 3% of our trips being on the bus going, if we adopt these business cases. Have we done an equation to work out, because people say that people on public transport saves carbon, it reduces our carbon footprint, but you need a number of people on a bus. Does that 3% reduce our carbon footprint, or actually, in fact, increase it? Because we're not at a number that it hasn't hit the sweet spot.
Sorry, I'm not sure I understand the question.
A bus has to have a particular number of people on it at any one per kilometre. It's got to have a number of people on it at any one time to be reducing carbon. If it doesn't have that number, it increases carbon.
Right.
Unless the buses are electric. They go electric too.
Yeah, it's a pretty limited number of people that need to use it for it to be beneficial in terms of a reduction of carbon emissions. So, 53% of our carbon emissions from Christchurch are transport related, and I think 40% of them relate to the land transport. So we know that single occupancy vehicles are a significant contributor to that. So what we're trying to do is put Christchurch in a place whereby, one, people have mode choice, and two, we try to address some of our climate change goals. So this looks to achieve both of those things. Sure, the overall total number is not as big as we would like it to be, but as I said, there is the mass rapid transit business case still to come. And what this does, by endorsing this, if the council is of the mind to do so, as Councillor Davidson said, it puts it up to the Crown and says we are working together with our strategic partners, which arguably we haven't been doing very well in the past, and we've got an integrated plan for Greater Christchurch, so we know that growth is going to happen out in Selwyn and Waimak, and we can integrate what they're doing out there with our land use and our transport priorities and get an outcome which is best for Greater Christchurch. It's not Christchurch City Council centric, it's not ECAN, it's about all 5 parties working together. So if you want to be in line for Crown funding, this is what you need to do, because you're not going to get PT priority measures approved for funding by the Crown unless you work together and endorse business cases like these.
So, just one more if I may. So finally, and it's a question I've asked a number of times, is do we have a model of any city anywhere in the world, a comparable income lifestyle city with a similar density of population, which it probably would if it had a similar income, that has a PT system that works and is reducing carbon?
Look, I don't know about an exact comparison, but in one of the appendices to the report that's in front of you today, there's a graph which shows Auckland, which obviously different, but it's still New Zealand, so some similarities there. And the increase in investment in infrastructure has led to there's a direct correlation between that investment and the increase in patronage of people using PT. I mean, Auckland was where we were 15 odd years ago, not dissimilar. 30 odd years ago, they had a central city which was hollowed out, and they're now quite different to that because they have invested wisely and encouraged development there. But in terms of PT, they have invested and they have got the benefits from it. So the increases in patronage that this business case predicts today are not dissimilar than what has happened up in Auckland if you take something like just the mass rapid transit, which is the North Shore busway, out of the equation. This is pretty similar to what's happened in Auckland. So that's not a bad thing at all, because Auckland is now reasonably accessible from a public transport perspective.
I've got Tim, James Goff, Sarah and Sam.
In the budgets that we're talking, is there any allowance for land purchase for park and ride?
There is park and ride, but I don't think it's within Christchurch City. It's more out in Selwyn and Waimak.
So on page 7 of the of 707, page 9 of 707, Park and Ride has the ability to increase the patronage by 3%, which technically is doubling what we're talking about with my colleague here. So the southwest expansion of Christchurch has been there forever and a day. It's been totally known. We've last 10 years we've been putting in front of whatever government we've had. So I'm just wondering, what provision are we having for Park and Ride? Because isn't that part of a vital part of the whole this? I mean, Rangiora or our partners are looking at this, but we've kind of missed the ball because if we're talking about Hallsville, which has been the southwest and been very clear that that's where we're expanding, and also the northeast, wouldn't we be having something allowance there, so through development contribution, so rather than a reserve, a parcel of land for this, the exact purpose for Park and Ride?
It's not been recommended in the business case. As you'd be aware, WIMAC have agreed to fund and build park and ride sites out in Rangiora and Kaipoi, and that's as part of the Christchurch Northern Corridor package of works. Selwyn are also looking at that as well, but it's not come through as a recommendation from the consultants in this business case for us. So normally you tend to park in more distant locations, ride to your central city or other location. I mean, the two biggest areas where you've got employment in Christchurch, I think, are the central city with 40-odd thousand FTEs, and the airport is probably second. So those are the areas where people want to go, but we do have a more dispersed land use pattern these days, so that does make it more difficult for public transport to operate. But having said that, if we concentrate development along these core routes, the 5 core routes, then what you're going to get is that continued uplift in patronage. So nothing in this business case about Park and Ride for Christchurch City, I don't think. Was there, John? No. But it's recommended it for Selwyn and WIMAC.
No, yeah.
I've got James, Goff, Sarah and Sam.
No, nothing from me. Lucky I wasn't at an auction.
Oh, that was a mistaken bid. Good.
No deal.
Cheers. Yes, Sarah and Sam.
Comes with a house.
Thanks, Richard. Just checking the numbers that are in here with the expected increases and things. Those numbers are purely based on the stuff that's actually in this business case and don't take into account any of the other levers that'll be pulled.
That's
Is that right? Yeah. So we're expecting with all of the other levers, so travel demand management, business case, parking levers, electrification of the buses, all of those kind of things will boost on top of that.
Yeah, and that's the Crown's expectation of us, is to do more in this space, because you get what you build for. You build more motorways, you'll get more cars. You build cycleways, you'll get more people cycling. And if you put in good bus priority measures and more frequent services, you will get an uplift in people using public transport.
Yeah. And fair to say that once these go in the various councils' long-term plans and things, we need to make sure that if we're expecting, say, ECAN to do their part with bus frequency and those kind of things and adding in the budget to do those over time, we need to make sure that we're doing the same and fulfilling our obligations and actually putting in the right amount of money to actually fulfil our obligations here too.
That's right, it's a partnership.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sam.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. So page 690, 3.8, so it says the business case also includes the additional 0.6 million per annum for OPEX. We haven't budgeted that into the draft LTP yet. Can you just talk me through how that would play out? So it says, we've obviously agreed informally on capital savings, on our operational savings,
Yep.
and it's not been recommended for inclusion. However, it could be revisited via the LTP. So would we be going out putting that cost in, or how do you see that playing out?
So given the business case, or the draft business case, kind of landed when we were preparing the financials for the draft LTP, it was a kind of an iterative process for us to work through. In terms of the 0.6 million recommendation, we feel we need to do more work on that before we put it into the transport operating budget. So, we didn't want to just stick it in because it had been recommended. And our initial thoughts are that we probably don't need it for the first year or two. So, it might be something that the organisation wants to call out as part of its consultation document. That will be something for you to consider. But at this stage, we didn't have enough certainty around whether it was going to be needed and when we were going to need it for us to say, please put this in the LTP.
Okay, so if it was an additional cost that you did think we will need in time, are we likely to take that from another budget within transport, or will it be an additional charge to the ratepayer?
I can't speak to that. That would be a decision of the organisation.
Yeah,
So.
I just know how hard it's been to find savings in transport as it is. So just trying to understand.
Yeah, I think we need to do further work on some of these costs, and that's why we haven't recommended the full suite of kind of capital as well. We think there's some things in there that we need to analyse further, and the capital program that we've recommended to you really is not a lot of new stuff in there for the first 3 years. So that gives us a chance to look at what's in the business case, to analyse it, to see whether we need to do absolutely all of it, or whether there's some stuff that we might not need to do or might be a bit smarter about.
Right.
Can I just invite the Chief Executive also to contribute to that?
So, Councillor MacDonald, I'm in complete agreement with Richard. I don't want figures put into the LTP that we're not certain on. And in particular, you've indicated it's highly unlikely we're going to need that in the first period. And then clearly we will have an annual plan process that we will be able to utilise when we have proper information that we can bring to members to have that debate on. But clearly we're not looking at years 1, 2 or unlikely 3.
All right, so I'll now open it up for debate. Sorry? Are there? Oh, sorry. I hadn't seen any more. Yanni?
Just looking at table 4 on page 745, is that correct? So from currently ECAN is spending, I don't know, $3 million. They're going to increase in year 1 by $3 million, the current bus operations, and they're going up to $38 million in year 7.
Sorry, I'm struggling to find a...
Just the ECAN bus contracts, the table 4, which shows 745. So the ECAN bus contracts go up from... I guess this is an increase on top of what is currently being spent. But the top line, it seems phenomenal that ECAN would go within 7 years from $3 million to an additional nearly 40 million, and then in year 9, 50 million. Like, I just can't quite understand the magnitude of that increase and how ECAN could even afford to go anywhere near that level of operational cost.
So in terms of the operational cost, we need to be aware that that's made up of, there's a funding bucket, right, and that's made up of 1, there's a contribution from rates, 2, there's a contribution from fares, so obviously every time someone gets on the bus they make a contribution, and then there's Waka Kotahi also subsidise that as well. So figures in there, only a portion of that would go to rates or be rated to the people of Christchurch, because some of it would be made up by bus users and some of it would be made up by the Crown. So, but that's probably something that ECAN need to speak to, and they need to go out and consult on their draft LTP and provide and get feedback on that themselves.
So do we know what the rates impact of that would be for our residents?
I don't know what.
Well, our residents actually pay ECAN rates as well, and $50 million a year.
So do all Canterbury ratepayers?
Yeah.
I can't speak to ECAN's rates increase, but they would be consulting on that and obviously make a decision themselves.
It just seems incredibly
Will
high.
be explicit in the. It will be explicit in terms of what we're consulting on, because we're all going to be talking about the joint approach in our LTP. So it will be consulted on, Yanni.
Yeah, but I guess what's concerning is that if that's untenable to the community, then it's unlikely to get...
not a debating issue. So
okay.
Stick to the questions.
Just, a few more questions. The Route 140, can you tell me what streets that's proposed to go down? Because this is the first time I've seen it. It's going to be changed. Well, if it's high level, then why is it in here?
Route 140?
What's that? So that's in the later
It's
part of
pretty specific in here, and I just like it's, cool.
That's
but-
Russley to Mount Pleasant.
Yeah,
I can't tell you
got a
exactly off the
whole
top of
own
my
page.
mind what streets it will go down, but I think that's further out in the LTP, and again, ECAN would consult on that through their LTP and probably consult on the route change as well.
The route change is a requirement to consult through a different process.
Yeah.
right. So basically that's flexible, but it's the kind of high level principle of changing
Yes.
that route.
It's about making it one of the priority routes.
Yeah, and so if we wanted to add like additional routes through, and if you look at the page 5 sort of network,
I'm sorry, no, I'm not going to take a question on if we added. This is a business case process that was funded by central government in order to assist us to work collaboratively with our neighbours and with the regional council, who all have different parts to play in this process. And we've had external consultants providing us with this business case to go forward to Te Waka Kotahi. So it is so I'm not going to take questions on if we added or if we subtracted.
when we
a
had the
route.
workshop, there was feedback given that some of the parts of the city that actually rely on public transport, and you do have actually things in here which talks about, and I just can't find the phrase, low private vehicle ownership communities. So you've got some recognition of that. The workshop briefing, there was feedback given to staff that there was concern that some areas of the city that are in that category don't seem to have good access to public transport. The Bromleys, the Woolstons, the Linwoods, right? The Aranuis, the Wainonis. So all I was trying to understand is how has that been considered in this business case? Because I understand in terms of the growth areas of the city, that, you know, is obviously quite obvious. But for those other areas that have seen bus routes actually be cut, what does this do to address that?
So again, more an issue for ECAM, but if I could speak to what the scheme of the business case is about, and it's really to start off with within the short term, so years 1 to 6, it's frequency improvements on the inner core services. So making sure we support that density, CBD periphery, those sorts of things, and increase the frequency to 1 per 7.5 minutes in the peak times. Then there's more frequent and direct secondary routes, so that's your 17 and your 28. And as I mentioned, that'll be us needing to support that using the craft money by putting in intersection improvements, bus shelters, that sort of thing. And then there's the improved links out to Selwyn and Waimak, so that's years 1 to 6. And in terms of years 7 plus, that's when you get the extensions, the branch extensions. So we're looking to utilise some of those cores, and you think of something like New Brighton, you go out to New Brighton and then it will go south down towards South Shore and north up towards Waimari Beach. So you extend those core routes out, and the same would apply down in the east as well. So, well, the southeast, I mean. So it's in the second part of the business case that we're looking to extend those the branch extension to the core routes and into the outer areas. The first 5 or 6 years is really about supporting and getting that patronage uplift in those areas which have the greatest density of development. But of course, council of its own volition may choose to bring forward some of the PT priority measures that we've currently got out in the latter years of our LTP, and that would be a conversation for ECAN as to whether they want to support that with an increase in services.
Yeah, just 2 final questions. One is looking at page 723, where it talks about connection stops, key stops and minor stops. I note that we now no longer have any reference to suburban interchanges or suburban hubs, which we've previously had. Is this saying that we will no longer look at the idea of having a suburban interchange?
It wasn't a recommendation that came out of the consultants' reports, and I guess that part of the rationale for that is if you put PT priority measures as well as increased frequency along your core routes, and you are going to get very regular bus services, then people have a lot less time to wait. So why would you therefore need to have suburban bus interchanges, which are one, very expensive and don't give you a good return on your investment, and two, are not going to be highly utilised because people don't have to wait for their buses because we've got a better frequency of service. So, and in terms of as we outlined in the report around community views and preferences, there was a customer insights survey that was done, and that was not something that came back from the customers who currently use public transport as being something that they felt was important. So we have gone and engaged with people, and they haven't said that, yep, that's fundamental to us using PT.
So that's cool. So, the sort of smart ticketing and the real-time information, like that use of technology, like one of the frustrations has been that the dumb technology that we use with ticketing, when are we going to be in a position to make it really easy and accessible for people to use their phone to pay for the bus trip, or have a card that can tell when people get on and off, so that we do get good data from how people are using the bus system? And I know we've already asked for a briefing on the real-time information, because obviously I guess the concern is that previously, historically, we've spent a fortune on that, and it seems to have a variable kind of impact in terms of the technology breaking down or needing lots of money to maintain and be fixed. So I guess I was really trying to understand the terms of priority in the business case, where that national ticketing, smart ticketing sits, and where the real-time information sits.
So we've specifically excluded national ticketing because that is being done by the Crown, and Christchurch is going to be one of the first cities to use the integrated ticketing, and my understanding is that that's not far off. And I agree that will make a significant difference in terms of the attractiveness of public transport. In terms of real-time information, the tech we have at the moment is very old, and it doesn't work as well as it should, and we are replacing that. And what we need to do is have a system where the RTI at the bus stops speaks to the buses, and the buses then speak with the interchange. So we know when a bus is going to arrive at a bus stop and when it is going to arrive at the interchange. So we should see a significant improvement in real-time information with the upgrade to the system. But also fundamental to that is when you put in the bus priority measures, obviously there's a far better chance of your bus arriving on time as well. So that's what people want to see. Even if we let them know through RTI that the bus is going to be 10 minutes away because it's late, they're still going to be annoyed that it's 10 minutes late. With bus priority measures, we've got a far greater chance of it being on time, and it will run quicker.
Are we going to approve the business case for investment in real-time technology?
You did say it was your last question.
This recommends some funding that would be included for that, but there's already a process in place where we've got information on, where we've got funding on budget to work with ECAN, and I put something in our Transport Bi-Monthly report on that yesterday.
But we never seem to see the cost benefit of that investment in that technology for a decision.
I said we'd commit to giving you a briefing on that.
Right.
I don't know if we'd have a specific cost-benefit analysis on real-time information. My advice would be to look at the broad increase in patronage that the suite of measures is trying to achieve.
Pauline.
It was just a request of the chair and second, the mover and seconder, if it would be a good idea to note in the words that you used before about us working together, the four organisations, and if they all endorse this and it goes as a first into the LTPs together, it might be good to record that if you think it's, because I think it's significant.
Well, I'm happy
Well, Leanne
to
put
have,
it so beautifully
I'm
before.
happy to have my words recorded as part of the resolution. The mover happy for that. All right, so we'll work on some wording, but it's just a noting provision around what I said. So, Mike, I'll hand over to you. Did you have a question, Jimmy? No. Mike Davidson.
Thank you. Today's actually a significant step towards addressing our public transport within both Christchurch and Greater Christchurch. Look, we're currently fortunate as a city actually not to have a congestion issue, but the reality is if we continue down the road we have followed over a number of decades, we will end up like Auckland. It is the lack of investment in public transport that has led it to only having 25% of the mode share in our city, and that's simply not sustainable. Increasing public transport benefits our city in a number of ways by reducing congestion, reducing travel time, increasing travel time reliability, increasing productivity, and importantly, reducing emissions. City Council has resolved to become a net carbon neutral by 2030 and the city by 2045, and transport has the biggest part to play in this, with it contributing 54% of emissions. Council and central government need to work on every aspect of transport, such as increasing percentage of EVs, car share, carpooling, cycling and public transport. One initiative on its own will not get us to our goal of being net carbon neutral. Following this business plan is the start of PT pulling its weight, and it will encourage mode shift. Once completed, 123,000 more households will be able to access the central city within 30 minutes on PT. 133,000 more households can access their key activity centre within 30 minutes on PT. 118,000 more jobs can be accessed within 30 minutes on PT. There will be 6 million more PT trips and 13 million less kilometres driven by cars. And there are many more levers that Council and the Regional Council will be able to pull to increase patronage and reduce emissions, especially using TDM, fares, cars, parking costs and the electrification of the fleet. What we have seen this term is a united Greater Christchurch, joined at the hip, wanting to improve public transport. Once this is approved, it is time to sit down with central government and have a serious conversation about co-investing to ensure these outcomes are delivered sooner rather than later. We also need to have an important discussion about the delivery and funding model that needs to be used to ensure that this happens across all partners that are actually invested in making this work.
Jimmy Chen.
Okay, I support this one, because based on the information, these are value for money, particularly for the future 10 years and also beyond. Because this one will increase the bus frequency, bus lane priority, bus stop improvement, including those bus shelter, etc. I think that's very important because, for instance, I'm the councillor for Hornby. At the moment, our main south road in the Horswood Junction Road, even the Lincoln Road, Tim, he mentioned earlier, there's always the traffic congestion quite serious. But I still prefer, still believe this kind of the business case give us depict the overall this strategic view for our future. I think that's very, very crucial and important. But this one is not only for the Christchurch only, like Mike mentioned earlier. There's a greater Christchurch because while like Hornby area and also north the west area, why we have those traffic congestion because our neighborhood to create those more kind of cars pass through every day. Not only for the high peak time period, but also for the off peak time period. Still, quite a traffic congestion. So whether it's opportunity for improve this program for the future public transport, this program then can change all those kind of driver behavior, and we just do from ourselves, change those one. You drive the car to the central city, to the town, whether you can increase the number of take the bus rather than to drive your private car. And also we already last year in May we declared this city is the kind of climate ecological emergency city, and recently the central government also announced this country is kind of climate the ecological emergency the country, so we have to working together to make this happen. So I'm happy to support this business case.
Andrew Turner and Tim Scandrett.
Thank you. I think the point drawn out in the response to one of the questions makes this really clear. If you build more motorways, you get more cars. If you build more cycleways, you get more people cycling. And if you invest in improvements to public transport, you'll get greater uptake. In the Christchurch context, or in the greater Christchurch context, in fact, that means that we'll get more people using the bus. We're in a fortunate position not to have significant congestion issues, some would say yet, such as those in Auckland. Well, we're not like Auckland, and we don't want to become like Auckland. So what we've got here is partnership in action. It's deliberate investment in public transport in action. Without a strategic and deliberate approach to public transport and without investment in public transport infrastructure, nothing will change. So this is the beginning, in my view, of the step change that we need to see to get more people out of cars and more people onto buses in Greater Christchurch, and I support it.
Tim?
Yeah, thank you. Look, there's no question we have to look forward and look to the future, and I will be supporting this, but I am disappointed with regards to Park and Ride. And why I mentioned that and why I mentioned Hallsville is it's the southwest, it's been planned for a long time, but if you look at the feeders into Hallsville, you've got the Ekara Highway, so all those communities off that. You've got expansion and huge development, Leaston, Prebbleton, Lincoln, all those areas, and they're feeding through. When the plan for Lincoln Road and four-laning Lincoln Road was put up first, NZTA were going to, made it very clear they were going to four-lane Hallsville Road, and that was for public transport. The plan was to go through to Whiteley Ave and Barrington Street, but that's the deadlock. So it is the local council, myself and the community board that pushed to get the plan for that Lincoln community, the Addington shops, etc., to be done first, so then it could flow through. Because we have had in the city communities like Waltham and others that have been cut to pieces by large roads. So that was a real concern. And then if you're looking at all these cars coming in the southwest, we've got the feed in through Centaurus Road and Cashmere Road into the older communities. And they have children going to school, etc. We have issues with those communities, with those kids crossing roads, etc., with the further transport. But I can't see without Park and Ride how we're going to just alleviate all of that. I think I'm really quite disappointed with that. And if you look at Beckenham has the highest per head commuter cyclists in Christchurch for the suburb, but their children still have to cross roads to get to schools. So I think the Park and Ride in the southwest is actually an important issue, and it feeds into so many other communities. So I will support this, but I am disappointed that the computer says no to Park and Ride, which is used it seems everywhere else in the world. And if you look at the 3% on top of 3%, that makes it 6%, which is 2% better than you're arguing. So thank you.
Any other? Sam?
Yeah, look, thank you, and I appreciate the work that's been done on this. I won't support it in its current form, and I don't do that because I disagree with public transport. I think there is a place for public transport. I do so because it's $60 million, additional, endorsing that over 10 years. And as a city, we have a range of priorities. We've had arguments for the last couple of weeks over the state of our infrastructure underground and the like. And so I just think when we need to compete those balancing interests, to be really frank, to look at the patronage of the buses now and to look where it will go over 10 years, I'm not so sure this is the best investment given the competing interests we have for our money at the moment. So, like I say, don't disagree with public transport. It has its place, but in the end, we have to balance those competing interests. And I think on this one, I sort of fall on the other side of it. Thanks.
Jake, Melanie and Sarah?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, we're being left behind in comparison to the rest of New Zealand because we're not being bold. We need to be aspirational, believe in Christchurch and build a 21st century public transport network. This is, because there's a fine line between being prudent and being short-sighted, and this is a first step in the right direction. And we can't really let opportunities like this pass us by. Some around this table seem that they don't even want to take a baby step in the right direction, and I think that we need to move forward, make this decision today, and obviously start a productive conversation with central government about what else we can do.
Melanie and Sarah?
Two of our strategic priorities, at least, because I can't find them, but one of them is about enabling connected communities and the other one's about climate change. I mean, I think that this is incredibly, it's such a priority for our council and for Canterbury. It's just, we all must support this, and I can't believe that anyone wouldn't. So I'm fully behind this and fully behind all the core routes, and we should all endorse it.
Sarah?
Thank you. There's a risk that people just look at this report in isolation, but this is the key infrastructure, routes and frequency that will allow other levers to do their work as well. We also need to be very clear here. Yes, there are costs to implement this plan, but the costs of inaction will be much greater. From financial commentators to the Governor of the Reserve Bank, the head of the Climate Commission and climate scientists, investing in our future now will save future generations from the economic, social and environmental impacts of climate change being as bad as they are currently predicted. And contrary to Councillor MacDonald, I believe this is a much better investment for our city. So imagine the population growth of Greater Christchurch, all coming into town by car every day at 83% vehicle occupancy. The congestion, the lack of productivity, and frankly, we would need to build another dozen Litchfield Street car parking buildings to host those cars at a cost of $360 million, 6 times what we're investing in this. That's simply not what we want to be at a city. Public transport is essential for so many in our city. Those who drive often can't see past the steering wheel, but cars are expensive to buy, run and maintain. And many simply cannot afford to do so. For those who cannot, PT is essential, and as are active transport modes. And for car owners who are struggling, having a good PT option to save money when other things are a priority is also incredibly important. Great cities have great PT. That's what we need to aim for, and this is a great start.
Pauline?
Yeah, I think $6 million a year, that's $60 million over 10 years, $6 million a year represents one small step for Christchurch City, but one giant leap for Greater Christchurch. That's all I really want to say, except one more thing. I'm warming to the colour of the buses. Yeah. I think it's really nice.
And Yanni.
I think.
Oh, sorry.
Aaron,
My apologies.
yeah.
Aaron was.
Yep.
I had Aaron written down, and I'd written Andrew by mistake, and I knew Andrew had already spoken, so I apologise. Aaron, and
It's the
then
three
Anne,
A's.
and then Yanni.
Okay, I've
The 18.
got a long lost brother called Andrew, so I'll take it as a compliment, Andrew. So, I mean, where to start? Boy, oh boy. I'm glad you're warming to the colours of the buses, Pauline, because it was reported to the Disability Committee this week that the colour doesn't work because people with sight impairment can't see them. So what a well-spent $1.5 million. So I look forward to that being remedied and the costs involved in that. Hopefully it's not a full change of the colour of the bus, but in addition of something on the front so those people can actually see it. Totally agree that public transport is an essential service to get people, especially those who don't have other options, from one point to another point. But trying to play the climate change card is an interesting one if we're going to do it purely mathematically, because when you spend money, if it costs you money, alarm bells should always go off. If it makes economic sense, it'll probably make environmental sense. And I say that based purely on the carbon, and yes, you can say we can electrify the entire fleet. Once New Zealand electrifies 10% of its fleet, we have to increase our power production. That is factual. We have to do it. There's an environmental cost to power. You can go to renewables and that, but so far PVs don't cut the mustard. They are kind of neutral in the cost of their production, their usage, their life, and then what you do with them at the other end. So, and trying to get any wind farms through the RMA is very, very expensive and puts up the cost of renewable energy. We have hydro here, which is good. A new dam in this country, good luck. I say to that, trying to get it through. And I remember in the late 90s, early 2000s, this council turning down the power on its street lights, which have luckily changed to LED, because to save power, because all the dams were low down south. So when we electrify the fleet, there will be some winters we'll have to say, actually, let's cut all those bus routes because there's not enough power to go round. Just spelling it out, because they're the facts. When you need power, all energy has a cost. No energy has no cost, even right to the point of biking. You burn calories, which costs you money. There is one environmentally sustainable form of transport, that is actually the e-bike. An e-bike for anyone will pay for itself in a year. The amount of money we're going to spend today would buy 150,000 e-bikes that we could hand out to the most needy people in our city, and we would cut an incredible amount of carbon. The future of transport is not the past. The future of transport is going to be a whole lot of things that we're not even thinking about now. We're about to commit $156 million to old thinking. Transport is about getting people from A to B, and there's a ton of really smart people out there that could really help us along the way without running 40-seater buses with no one on them sometimes. Sometimes they peak, but the average load has a higher carbon rating against the environment than the average load on passenger vehicles.
Thank you. Perfect timing. Can I just remind councillors that when councillors are speaking, whether you agree with them or not, every councillor is entitled to express their view around this table, and I didn't want to interrupt you because it was a 3-minute, but I'm just making the point.
That's all right. You have heckling in a comedy club and it feels like that.
Yeah, I know. But I don't want to encourage responses either. So, Yanni. Oh, sorry, Anne.
Kia ora. I think scientists are pretty sure that dinosaurs didn't know that they were being slowly poisoned by the gases going into their environment, into their atmosphere. Maybe we're dealing with a few present-day dinosaurs today. As the report says, this is about planning for our future, and Greater Christchurch will experience an increased need for travel due to the projected population growth. This will result in growing congestion. Has anyone tried to get down Blenheim Road or Lincoln Road at about 4:30 in the afternoon? So all the associated environmental impacts go along with that. We must improve, to avoid this, we must improve our journey times and reliability of our public transport services relative to private vehicles. We must improve services to and from highly populated growth areas, and this is where I totally am in agreement with Tim in terms of park and ride. I would really love our council to just start investigating some places, some options for park and ride in the southwest in partnership with Selwyn. So if we could do that, that would be fantastic. And we must remove the barriers for uptake. So come on, ECAN, let's get some free fares for our under 18s. That would be fantastic. Unless we plan now, we will all be waiting in line, just as they do in Auckland, and none of us want that.
Yanni?
Yeah, thank you. Just over 2 years ago, I spent a few hours at Eastgate Mall collecting signatures for a petition because people had their bus routes cut from the lowest socio-economic areas of our city by ECAN. It left many people angry and shocked, while at the same time those bus routes were cut, ECAN did actually restore bus services to the wealthier parts of the city. There was very limited engagement with those people in the community, but what became clear was that people actually rely on public transport as a basic need rather than a privilege. What disappoints me about the business case today, having also been just about 2 years ago at workshops in Aranui, the future Aranui Streets project, which talked with local students and local people, that again highlighted the need for the area to be improved in terms of public transport, that nothing in this plan in the short term addresses those basic needs for the people that actually need it the most. What this plan is proposed to do is focused on increasing patronage at the expense of coverage, and I fundamentally disagree with that approach. I'll just quote some statistics from that Aranui report. To quote from the report, the public transport connections do not appropriately meet the needs of the students. There are distinctive areas further away from school with limited access. The two main bus routes do not service a lot of students. Only 20% of them live within 1,500 metres of bus lines, and in addition, the distance of the bus stops from the school are between 300 and 600 metres away. And I'll just show you guys the big map that shows this huge gap in bus provision in the eastern part of the city around Wainoni, Aranui, Linwood and Bromley. And it's really disappointing to see that the business case does not address that provision. In fact, what it seems to do is put it as a lower priority. The other concerns that I have with this business case is it actually isn't radical or bold enough. It should be done at the same time as the MRT. If we really want people to take public transport, then some of the numbers in here are frightening for the amount of money that's going to be spent. We need to absolutely look at the ease of ticketing. One of the other interesting things that came up in the Aranui report was that one of the biggest barriers was the cost. And until we address the fare structure, and until we address the idea that public transport should be run as a competitive, private, profit-motivated industry rather than a cooperative, basic public good, I think we're always going to struggle to be able to provide the service provision that we like. We spend a huge amount of money on things like bus stops and real-time information, and then what we see is bus routes are changed and contracts are changed, and we're the worse for it. So I think this doesn't go far enough. It needs to do more, and it certainly isn't focused on helping those people in the lowest economic areas of the city that rely on PT.
Thank you. I'll just say a couple of words. James?
I like being last.
You're not last.
Okay, well, I'll be last.
No, you...
Okay. Right, so look, comparing our...
Yeah, he gets a right of reply.
Comparing our congestion with Auckland's is a waste of time. It's like comparing our house prices with Auckland's. Theirs are too high in both of those cases, and so is ours. And that's the problem, is that our congestion, which is identified by Councillor Galloway, a couple of good examples of where congestion is a very real issue here. So I'm supporting the investment, this investment into PT. I don't think it's sufficient, and there are issues about it that I have with it, but something is better than nothing. And so, and the last thing I want to mention is Councillor Cotter talking about the colour of those buses. It's a terrible colour, but I can't wait until IRD starts their sponsorship of our PT.
I'll just say a couple of words. I've been very outspoken about my frustration with the public transport system, which is not a system. And we've heard that very clearly today. It isn't a system. We're responsible for the road corridor decisions. We're responsible for the supporting infrastructure for the buses. ECAN runs the bus routes, and they are responsible for consulting with our constituents, our residents, about the bus routes. And it is not a decision that comes to council. We get to submit on it as a submitter, not as a decision maker. That ECAN runs the system by a tender system, and the public transport operating model, PTOM, they are under a legal obligation to follow the model. We have for years and years and years made huge investment decisions about improvements to our corridor in order to support the system, but without the commitment to increase the bus frequency and dependability, because reliability and frequency, they're absolutely core to offering people real choice about changing their mode of transport. And so this to me is the first time that we are coming together with our partners. I know that central government has said publicly that they want to see the business cases come forward from Christchurch, Waimakariri, Selwyn and Environment Canterbury. They want us to be combined together. This is how we approach Wakakotahi in relation to how we get the funding. This is how we approach central government, coupled with the mass rapid transit business case, which is the next cab off the rank. We'll be considering that this week. That is the next stage in the journey, and I think that we've got the best chance we have ever had to make the step change that everyone is looking for. Mike, can I invite you to close the debate?
Yeah, I probably shouldn't, but it is Christmas. Look, first of all, I'd like to thank Aaron for impersonating Donald Trump with 3 minutes of fake news. Look, and I think we should see these business cases as a minimum, because I hear what Yanni's saying and Tim and Anne, and there's a lot more we can do in public transport. We can't discount My Way as an option, trying to connect people that aren't close to these routes that have been identified, and there's a lot of work still to be be done. But yeah, fare structure, ticketing systems, park and rides, they all need to be looked at as we move forward. To me, this is actually the basic minimum investment. We need to start things moving. And the MRT is a key part of the PT Futures, and obviously the endorsement of that will probably happen in the later part of 21. But now's the time to start having a proper conversation with central government. You know, it's quite interesting, and this is my personal opinion from what I've seen over a number of items this term, is that there are a number of councillors who will vote against anything that benefits the environment, the community, and any transport mode that is not a car, using the impact as rates as their excuse. Yet, when there's a decision that benefits the wealthy or developers, these councillors are not so loud. Just an item before, one of these councillors was happy to chip in $10 million to help a developer. Thank you.
Thank you. I will put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no.
No.
That's division will be quicker. Yep, thank you.
Councillor Templeton? Aye. Councillor McClellan?
Aye.
Councillor McDonald?
Definitely not.
Councillor Johansson? No. Councillor Galloway? Councillor Daniels?
Aye.
Councillor Coker? Yes. Councillor Chen?
Yes.
The Mayor?
Yes.
Councillor Scandrich?
Yes.
Councillor Major? No. Councillor Hewitt?
No.
Councillor Goff?
No.
Councillor Davidson?
For the future of our city, aye.
Councillor Cotter? For the greater good, aye. Councillor Chu? No. Councillor Turner?
Yes.
We just need to get developers. 11 votes for. It's 11 votes for and 6 votes against.
I declare the motion carried. Thank you very much, and thank you to staff. Have a great Christmas. I know that we're going to see you this week anyway, but thank you.